So, a pretty hot topic in the fighting game space right now is that Fatal Fury City of the Wolves is adding Cristiano Ronaldo to the playable roster. But it isn't just him. A famous DJ by the name of Salvatore Ganacci, who apparently is a SNK superfan, is also joining the Day 1 roster as well. I get it. I mean, you try and expand to different communities, different groups of people around the world to try and build interest to your game. But when we're talking guest characters in fighting games, there have been tons of instances over the many years the genre has existed that we've seen guest characters from other worlds, other kind of games, media, kind of whatever really. And it has been almost endless. And that, I thought, would be an interesting topic for today's video. Fighting games and guest characters have definitely started to go hand in hand, whether it's Mortal Kombat and its plethora of guests from film, comics and TV, whether it's Street Fighter with its various collaborations, or if it's Terry Bogard appearing in seemingly any fighting game at all. It is something that has become almost standard at this point. Guest characters build interest from other fans of other franchises, interest means sales, and sales mean more games and content in the future. I get it. However, there have been times where guest characters have popped up in fighting games, and it's been a bit confusing to say the least, and I want to dive into that today. My name is Ketchup, and today's video explores some weird guest characters in fighting games. If you enjoy this video, why not click the like button or even consider subscribing for more fighting game content. We start off with something the most familiar to me, and that is Freddy Krueger in Mortal Kombat 9. Now, I already know what you're going to say here. Ketchup, Mortal Kombat and horror-themed characters make total sense. Why are you bringing them up here? Well, look, over 10 years later and loads of games to match the theme, yeah, it does make sense. Now. But I want to put you into different shoes when this game was hot off the press and guest characters weren't the norm. This entire game was a celebration and rebirth of the original Mortal Kombat trilogy, so the roster was built from beloved characters that everybody remembers and characters that many fans were eager to see make their grand return. The Combat Pack, which included Scarlet, Kenshi and Rain, were healthy additions to that general idea, bringing back or introducing characters that fans had always had a solid interest in. So imagine the fans' surprise when their fourth character is announced, and it's Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street. I was pretty annoyed as a young guy, I have to admit that. I wanted to see Mortal Kombat characters, and seeing this guy pop up just seemed really random and confusing to me. What's worse is that when Freddy actually made his appearance, he didn't have much of that famous personality that fans of the horror franchise loved the character for in the first place. This was mainly because the DLC characters in MK9 had no spoken dialogue, just assorted attack sounds, grunts, pain noises, maybe the occasional laugh here and there, but nothing that the team could work with to add character to somebody who was known for character, thanks to Robert Englund's iconic performances over the many years. Speaking of Robert Englund, by the way, the Freddy in this game wasn't even based on him, or it certainly didn't seem like it. It seemed to have more in common visually to Jackie Earle Haley's take on the character, and that was the Freddy from the 2009 remake. And there's no knock at Jackie here, he is an incredible actor, most commonly known in this space for his performance as Rorschach in The Watchmen. But when we're talking Freddy Krueger as a guest character in something, you would have expected a real throwback to all of the earlier work, because that is what made Freddy so memorable in the horror space. Competitively, he was rather unappealing. He was actually extremely powerful in the meta for his rushdown game, his mix-ups and his zoning, but overall, he had 2 gloves instead of 1, kind of just threw gloves at you. It wasn't a particularly engaging style of play, but it was effective at what it did well. I get that over 10 years of hindsight, guest characters work in Mortal Kombat. Some definitely more memorable than others, sure, but back then this was an out-of-the-blue choice, and something that created a significant divide between fans, and I guess that divide still exists today. But at least we've had over a decade of success to look through, so we can at least see why they start to appear as often as they do. Okay, so Freddy was weird at the time, but it's horror and a character that does plenty of fighting in various forms. That worked for Mortal Kombat. But now, let's look at something completely different. It's EVO 2018. You're in the seats in the Mandalay Bay Arena, and you're about to watch the Tekken 7 Top 8. Bandai Namco releases a trailer being played live to the audience at home and the in-person crowd, which I was actually in that year, commentating Injustice 2's second year, and I was in the arena on that day to watch the overall finals. The trailer shows a bunch of Season 2 stuff, gameplay bits and bobs, you know, the standard stuff that you get in these kind of trailers, but then, right at the end, you hear a noise. Then, you hear Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Then it hits you like a ton of bricks. This is Negan from The Walking Dead. Negan from The Walking Dead in Tekken 7. You can hear the confusion live and direct.
What? So Negan is in Tekken before Julia is?
This was by far one of the most surprising guest reveals I think we've ever seen in the fighting game space, and hey, I mean, sure, why not? Walking Dead was super popular at the time, and Jeffrey Dean Morgan's portrayal of Negan was one of the best things on TV by a mile. But how on earth do you put that idea into a fighting game? Well, he's got Lucille, obviously, and he uses it in loads of his moves. I guess you kinda had to combine that with some various punches and knees and little kicks to make him more rounded. Tekken 7 had tons of moves, I mean that's just the way Tekken's always been. But when it comes to the Rage Art, the Rage Drive, like the big money moves, yeah, it's all baseball bat. Watching high-level Negan was always kind of funny to me because of the sheer absurdity of it all. You have to sort of double take and realize that this is real. He's walking in and saying, "I hope you have your shitting pants on," and then he has to fight like a robot lady or a Mishima or Yoshimitsu or something. What does Negan know about the perfect electric? You know what I mean? Either way, Negan was used a little bit in competitive, just enough to remind yourself that he exists, I suppose, and to be fair, Tekken 7 seemed like a fairly balanced game for a lot of its life. I mean, if Panda wins the World Tour Finals one year, I guess anything's possible. But this will remain one of the biggest reveals and most unexpected guest characters in the history of the genre. From one 3D fighting game to another, it's time to look back on Dead or Alive 4, an Xbox 360 exclusive title released in 2005 in Japan and 2006 in the rest of the world. Before the time of constant guest characters from other genres and franchises, we saw Spartan 458 from the Halo series make an appearance as a playable fighter in this game, which was definitely something different. I think this is one of the more tame entries in today's list because when you think of Xbox and Halo, they definitely go hand in hand. But again, this was before the idea of guests in this sense being a common thing. I know we've had guest characters for years in the arcade, and you even had crossover games back then, but this is a completely different story. According to the wiki, Spartan 458, whose real name is Nicole, was not a canon character in either universes. It would be later down the line that Spartan 458 is occasionally mentioned in the Halo games, however not so much in DOA it seems. She's a pretty long character to unlock because you have to complete the story mode with Helena Douglas, who supposedly is the only character you unlock by beating the game with every character in the game, so that's a lot of gameplay to even reach Spartan 458. Now, I did actually play a tiny bit of DOA 4 back then when I was a teenager, and I wasn't super clued into the lore of neither Halo nor DOA. So the first thing I always noticed was just how bloody tall she was. Even taller than Bass, or Base, oh my god, Dead or Alive players, kill me in the comments, who was meant to be the tallest character in that game. It makes sense, as Spartans are essentially super soldiers and are always significantly taller than everyone else, but as a young guy I was like, oh damn, this character's tall as hell. She also had a unique stage that was Halo related, bouncing people off warthogs and fighting in this space station that many people likely remember from games like Halo 2, and apparently she was quite good. I was speaking to Perfect Legend not so long ago in research for this video, and he's a Dead or Alive 4 champion, and she was often seen as a top 5 contender, I've been told, even showing me some old competitive footage of when DOA 4 was in its prime time. Apologies for the quality in these clips, but hey, this was well over a decade ago, and I'm just thankful that community members were able to keep this history alive at all. I'm all about that on this channel. Overall though, Spartan 458 was a significant entry to the game and a powerful pick for tournament play. But the sheer existence of this character was something that I don't think many people expected back then. But if you're gonna add a guest in an Xbox game back in the 2000s when Halo was on fire, yeah, I guess this one makes sense. Even at a time that we weren't seeing this kind of thing as a regular occurrence. Street Fighter Cross Tekken was a crossover game, as the title clearly suggests, and it released during the days of Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. Although the general story of Cross Tekken is documented pretty well these days, and it's no mystery that this game was met with scrutiny for its gem system, some of which you had to pay for, the on-disc DLC outrage where characters were kept on disc only to be released for a fee later down the line, the balance issues and people being unhappy with the early stages of launch gameplay, you'd be forgiven if you forgot about this PlayStation exclusive guest character, Cole from Infamous. PS3 Street Fighter Cross Tekken had quite a few exclusives, more than you likely remember, but the most remembered is probably the Mega Man in this game, who, I gotta say, an unofficial honorable mention for this video, because it wasn't the Mega Man that people wanted, it was the weird Western box art Mega Man from the NES days. I, to this day, do not understand how they thought this was going to go over well with anyone, and then you had the launch issues that this game suffered. It seemed like a bad joke that didn't land at all, and it couldn't have landed at a worse possible time. But he actually doesn't appear in this video because Mega Man is still Capcom. Capcom made this game. It isn't that unusual. What was strange and a bit out of the blue was the inclusion of Cole McGrath, the protagonist from the Infamous games released on PS3. Now, I don't know much about this game, so I'm not going to pretend otherwise, and I genuinely have no idea if there was like an interview or something that explains why he was added to Cross Tekken. I can only imagine it was a platform thing because that game was made by Sucker Punch Studios, who were known for making quite a few high-quality games on the PlayStation platform. Cole has the power of electrokinesis, so this means there's a lot of electricity in his moveset. Unfortunately, I can't really talk about his viability because whenever I asked Cross Tekken players, I mostly got met with the story that he was just banned for being console exclusive, and a lot of old competitive footage either didn't exist or it would be in far too poor quality to learn from. Due to the exclusive nature, this kind of character does kind of fall into obscurity, and is forgotten about in the general story of what this game had to offer. Street Fighter Cross Tekken does have a player base to this day, and it has over time stood out as having some fun stuff in it for players to sink their teeth into if they're looking for something a little bit different. But the story of this game is often so marred with the bad launch, and the troubles that the game faced, and the people that were so angry and upset over the Mega Man inclusion and the DLC and everything, that generally you would be forgiven for forgetting that Cole was even in this game at all. And finally, we finish with another 3D title, but this one is far earlier in the 3D fighting game genre, Battle Arena Toshinden. I think when people look back on this series, they mostly remember it for the original PlayStation. Battle Arena Toshinden 3 was our first ever time playing the franchise, and then we played Toshinden 4 about a year later. Gameplay-wise, this game hasn't aged well, in my opinion. It did have some cool characters and some super nostalgic music that occasionally I even use on this channel, but overall it's not something I've gone back to all that much to relive some childhood memories. So in researching this video, you can imagine my surprise when I realized that the original Toshinden game had one of the first instances of a super out-of-place guest character, Earthworm Jim! And oh no, not just the original Battle Arena Toshinden, just the version that was released on MS-DOS. I tried so hard to get my hands on this game, but I just cannot get it working on modern systems. Would you believe it? so all I've had to go by is the rare chance of YouTube clips existing that I can at least show you a little bit. Gameplay-wise, I believe Earthworm Jim is a reskin of an existing character, so he doesn't really have any of his own moves here. But bloody hell, I've enjoyed Earthworm Jim when I was a kid. We had the 3D platformer on the N64, and the old side-scrollers were super fun, but of all places I'd expect to see him, this is probably last on the list. What connection does this character possibly have to a game like this? And this isn't even the only time he appeared in a fighting game. He's playable in Clay Fighter as well. 2 appearances overall, and that's already more than other characters that could be guests. What a ridiculous world these fighting games are. Not much else to say about this one, only that it caught me way off guard, and I had to end with something super strange, because that is ultimately the point of today's video. However, that is all we have time for in today's video on weird characters in fighting games of the guest variety, and it's no mystery that I've left out a ton. I'm sure there's loads of you in the comments that will say, hey, you should have mentioned this or that, and don't worry, that's on a list for another video for another time. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care.